right, here we are back again. I hope you took a little break. We're going to go over set D, E, and F of the reteaching, which is on page 50 in your workbook. So set D corresponds to page 29 to 34, which is lesson 1-5. So we're writing greater than, less than, or equal to, and comparing decimals. So the first thing you need to do is line up the decimals, starting at the left to compare, and find the first place where the digits are different. So we're going to use that strategy and to compare our numbers. So in number 1, over here, I'm going to write it off to the side. I'm going to rewrite my decimals. Don't trust your eyeball. I'm going to rewrite my decimals and put them in place value order so I can compare them. And remember, so we have the same number of place values, I can annex a 0. So starting with the largest place value, they both have zeros in the 1 place. They both have 5s in the 10th place. They both have 8 in the 100th place. So I have to look all the way to the thousands. So 4 is bigger than 0. So I'm going to say 584 thousandths is greater than 58 hundredths. For number 2, again, always rewriting them. Don't trust your eyeballs. Sometimes they can deceive you. It's always best to write your digits vertically like this. So starting at the largest place value, whole number 1, 1's place, they both have 9s. And when we get to the 10th place, we can see there's a difference there. So we don't even have to go to the hundredths and the thousands. So what's bigger, a 3 or a 2? So it is 9 and 327 thousandths is greater than 9 and 236 thousandths. For number 3, we have 5.2, 5.20. And remember, we're always going to annex a 0. So we have the same digits in place value. Starting with the largest place value, the 1's place in this case. They both have 5s, they both have 2s, they both have 0s. So these guys are equal to each other. Number 4, 5 and 64 thousandths, 5 and 675 thousandths. They both have a 5, they both have a 6. The first place value that they have different values, different digits, is in the hundredths place. So I know that 7 is greater than 4. So I'm going to say 5 and 643 thousandths is less than 5 and 675 thousandths. And for the last one, for number 5, I have 7 hundredths and 8 hundredths. Same in the 1s, same in the 10ths. 8 hundredths is bigger than 7 hundredths. So I say 7 hundredths is less than 8 hundredths. All right, so that's our comparing decimals. Always remember to rewrite the decimals and line up the place value. That is the most critical thing so you don't make careless errors. Set E is page 35 to 40, which is lesson 1-6. So we're going to round now, rounding 12 and 87 hundredths to the place of the underlined digit. So we're going to do some rounding here, and 12 and 87 thousandths, look at the digit following the underlined digit. So in this example, you're rounding to the hundredths, and there's an 8 there. So we look to the guy next to it, and it's a 7, and round to the next greater number of digits because 7 is greater than 5. Remember the rounding rule: if it's 5 or more, let it soar. If it's 4 or less, let it rest. Or you can say if it's greater than 5, increase it. If it's 4 or less, leave it the same. They're actually decreasing the number. But remember, rounding a number means replacing it with a number that tells about how much or how many. So as we're working here, we're going to take a look at the digit next to the 2 because we're rounding to the tens place. And 4 is less than 5. So basically, we're going to round this to 10.2. And the next one, we're looking, the underlying digit is in the tens place. So we're looking at the 3 next to it. And 3 is less than 5. So we're going to, actually in this case, we have to put an x value there. We can't just write 7 as our answer. Remember, we're rounding to 7 because that is a whole number. So when we round 7, when we round this value to the nearest tens place, we have to make sure we put a 0 there so we know the answer is 7D and not just 7. So be careful on the whole number rounding. Don't forget your whole number rounding rules. Okay, number 4 is a little tricky. So we're going to round to the tenths place. And we're going to have to look at the guy next to it, which is a 9. So the 9 is going to bump the 9 up. And when 9 gets bumped up, it actually bumps the 3 up too. So we wind up with the whole number 4. But we want to put a 0.0 because we're rounding to the nearest tenths place. So the reader knows that 3 and 999 thousandths, when rounded to the nearest tenths place, is 4 and 0 thousand, or 0 tenths. So make sure you stick that 0 in there because you're rounding. You've got to include that place value in your answer because that's the place value you're rounding to, even though there's a 0 in there. For number 3, sorry, I got out of order there. 4 is going to leave the 1 alone because 4 is 4 or less. Let it rest. Just get rid of it. For number 5, 13 and 23 thousandths, the 3 is going to do nothing to the 2, so we just drop it. So you can see that value has decreased. And 43 or 45 and 398 thousandths. We've got a 3. We want to round to the tenths place. So the 9 is going to, it's 5 or more, so it's going to make the 3 go up to the next digit. It's going to increase. So we have 45, and instead of 3, we write 4, and we stop the value there. So that's rounding. If you're still having trouble with rounding, you can go into MobyMax. I've put some assignments in there for you to help reinforce some rounding skills. And then the last thing we have on here, which I know some kids like, some kids didn't, but we're looking at the grid and we're trying to look for some patterns here. So think about the questions to help you look for the answers using structure to understand and explain numbers with decimal patterns with decimal numbers. Each grid is part of a decimal number chart. So it would be part of a big, huge chart. Write the missing numbers to complete the grids. And I know this gets tricky, but we have to think about when we're going in this, and when we're going left, we're getting smaller. And when we're going down, we're getting larger. So if that helps you a little bit, that might help. So when I'm getting smaller for 14, I'm going to hit 13 and 12. And when I'm getting larger, going down, I'm going to increase, instead of a 1 in the tenths, I'm going to put a 2. And then I'm going to put a 3. And for this guy, 8, what comes after 87? 88. What comes before 87? 86, 85, 84. Don't forget your decimal. And 88, what comes what's less than, because we're going in that direction, so it's decreasing, getting smaller. So 88 would become 78, and then this would become 68. So 84, we're going to decrease the tenths place, is 74 and 64. So you're either increasing in the rows, you're increasing in the hundredths place, and in the columns going down, you're increasing in the tenths place. All right, so there we go. That's our review of the second reteaching page. And remember, go back in your book and you can look at some of the work in the book. Go to the homework pages and work on them a little bit, or do some of the buddy work or some of the other activities you didn't finish. Have a good day.